Alright, strap in, because in this video, a British reporter absolutely takes a Trump loyalist apart live on air. She shows up full of confidence, throwing out the same tired lines we've all heard before. But the moment the tough questions start coming, it all falls apart fast. Within minutes, she's flustered, cornered, and ultimately walks out of the interview for everyone to see. This isn't your standard news clip, this is straight up must-watch drama. Let's dive in.
As promised to Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, former Global Vice President of Republicans overseas, as an advisor to Donald Trump's 2017 transition team. Dr. Halper-Hayes, thank you so much for joining us. In this country and in Europe more generally, would have seen what happened in the Oval Office as an attempt to humiliate President Zelensky and be repulsed by it.
Well, if they watched all 53 minutes, then I don't think they would have that feeling. If they saw clips of it, which of course will be clips of J.D. Vance and Trump being very angry with Zelensky, then of course they would come to that.
Could you imagine President Trump speaking to, say, President Putin in that way? And isn't it precisely the point that he wouldn't, that is part of the problem?
Well, if President Putin pushed him the way Zelensky pushed Trump,
what did Zelensky do? What did he do that was so egregious in your view?
Well, one is that he started litigating the 2014. He said, I don't want a ceasefire.
He said he wants peace repeatedly. He just doesn't want it on Russia's terms, which you'll understand because Russia invaded his country.
But he said, I don't want a ceasefire. He made that comment to Trump.
He said he doesn't want a ceasefire if he knows that Putin is just going to renege on it a couple of months later, which is fair enough, isn't it? Because he's done that repeatedly, you will accept.
Exactly.
No, not exactly. I mean, the point is that, of course, anyone wants a ceasefire, but there's no point having a ceasefire, is there? Which is what Zelensky was saying to Trump, if Putin is just going to renege on it shortly afterwards.
And Trump was saying, how do you really know? I mean, if you're really coming from that position, that no one can guarantee anything. But if you don't move forward to get something into an agreement and then be able to put the right security...
But what has Putin said that gives you or President Trump any indication at all that he even wants a ceasefire? Putin has said he doesn't want a ceasefire at this point.
Putin is... Look, I'm not here to have an argument because you clearly have a position that I don't agree with.
What would that be? What would that position be?
Well,
I mean, we would both agree, wouldn't we, for a start, that Putin started the war?
Yeah, what I would say is that Putin legally violated international law. Morally, he thought he was right, and strategically...
But you would agree that morally he was wrong?
I know I would not agree morally is wrong. I would agree legally he was wrong.
You would agree, you would not think that a man who literally, as we speak, still sends drone attacks to kill Ukrainian civilians is morally wrong?
Oh, and you think that Ukraine isn't doing anything to the Russians?
Ukraine didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. That you wouldn't agree that was morally wrong?
Okay, all right. You know what? That is 3 years ago.
Right. So if we were sat in 1942, would you have been on the radio going, "Look, don't worry about it. Hitler invaded Poland 3 years ago"?
You know what? I didn't sign on for this hypothetical discussion.
It's not hypothetical. I'm just trying to tease out the logic of what you're saying, Dr. Halper-Hayes.
One is that James Baker and Thatcher and Mitterrand and Kohl, etc., had promised that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward, and that was violated.
Those countries.
You want to look at all the different people that violated their agreement?
When did America start basically just sort of representing what Moscow thinks? Those countries wanted to be part of the NATO club. Your club. Are you saying that they should never have been allowed to exercise their democratic and sovereign rights as nations and join that club?
Oh, God. You know what? I don't like having my words twisted. No. I really don't.
You don't like Well, but that's the point of an interview, isn't it? Is to discuss what you're saying. And I'm just asking you. You're saying with respect, Doctor. I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. You're saying that those countries should never have been allowed to join NATO, and then we wouldn't have been in this situation. And I'm saying to you that surely those countries should have been allowed.
I didn't say that.
Well,
see, that's why. No. Hold on a minute.
But you cited what happened in the. So you're saying that it's fine for them to join NATO then?
I didn't say any of those things, and I don't like when someone tries to give words and interpret without understanding. I'm done. Okay. I'm off. I don't like you.
In a tense live interview with a British journalist, Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, a former global vice president of Republicans overseas and advisor to Donald Trump's 2017 transition team, faced a question that cut straight to the heart of the Ukraine war. It wasn't about military strategies, ceasefires, or NATO treaties. It was much simpler. Do you believe Vladimir Putin is morally wrong? What followed was not clarity, but evasion. While most of the Western world across the political spectrum has no hesitation in condemning Putin both legally and morally, Halper-Hayes drew a sharp and puzzling line. She admitted that Russia violated international law when it invaded Ukraine, but when pressed on whether Putin's actions were morally wrong, she refused to go there. No, I would not agree he is morally wrong, she said firmly. This distinction between legal guilt and moral guilt struck many viewers as astonishing. What does it mean to admit that a leader has broken international law, yet still withhold moral condemnation? The analogy is glaring. It is like acknowledging that a bank robber broke the law but refusing to say he did anything ethically wrong. The journalist sensed the weakness immediately. He pointed out that as the interview was happening, Putin's military was still sending drones and missiles into civilian areas, killing Ukrainian men, women, and children. How could anyone hesitate to call that morally wrong? Halper-Hayes pushed back. She countered with the claim that Ukraine too had blood on its hands, as though the defender of a country under invasion could be equated with the aggressor who launched that invasion in the first place. The deeper issue here is not just the refusal to call out Putin's morality, it is the way in which the conversation collapsed under the weight of this refusal. Every attempt by the interviewer to clarify was met with deflection, hypotheticals, or complaints about being misrepresented. When the journalist compared the logic to World War II, asking if one would have downplayed Hitler's invasion of Poland 3 years later, Halper-Hayes bristled. "I didn't sign up for this hypothetical discussion," she snapped. Eventually she declared, "I'm done," and abruptly ended the interview. The refusal itself became the story. Here was a former Trump advisor, live on air, incapable of uttering the basic moral truth that launching a brutal war of conquest, slaughtering civilians, and violating a sovereign nation's borders is wrong not only legally, but morally. Some might dismiss this as a quirk of one guest under pressure, but the symbolism runs deeper. The Trump wing of the Republican Party has long been accused of adopting a softer stance toward Putin, framing the conflict in terms of NATO expansion or Western provocation rather than Russian aggression. Halper-Hayes' refusal to deliver a moral condemnation plays directly into that perception. It signals a worldview where geopolitics is stripped of moral clarity. Everything becomes transactional, negotiable, a matter of strategy or legality rather than right or wrong. That distinction matters because history has shown that when democracies lose the courage to name evil for what it is, authoritarian leaders gain space to operate. The most striking part of the exchange was how quickly it unraveled. What began as a policy discussion about ceasefires and peace talks disintegrated into an emotional standoff, not because the journalist was aggressive, but because Halper-Hayes refused to engage with the most fundamental point, the refusal to grant even the simplest moral judgment. Yes, Putin is wrong to invade, made every other argument sound hollow. And when she finally hung up, the absurdity continued. The next caller didn't want to discuss law, morality, or strategy. Instead, he complained about President Zelensky not wearing a suit at the White House, as if the outcome of a brutal war hinged on wardrobe choices. The interview was set up as a serious discussion about the war in Ukraine, US foreign policy, and the way President Zelensky had been treated during his visit to the White House. At first, it looked like it would follow the usual format, questions about strategy, ceasefires, and diplomacy. But within minutes, it veered off course. What should have been a careful exchange of ideas quickly spiraled into a breakdown, not because the questions were hostile, but because the answers refused to engage with them. The journalist pressed the Trump advisor on the key issue of morality. Did she agree that Putin's invasion of Ukraine was not only illegal, but also morally wrong? This was not an abstract or trick question. It was straightforward, yet the answer never came. Instead of addressing the point directly, the guest chose to sidestep, drawing a narrow line between what is legal and what is moral. That refusal to make a clear statement set the tone for everything that followed. Once the invasion began, the discussion could. And there you have it, another debate that crumbled under the weight of its own evasions. If you want more sharp breakdowns like this, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Licensed Reporter, and turn on the bell so you never miss an upload. We've got plenty more to come. Stay tuned.